everyone, my name is Melissa Bowers and I would like to thank you today for coming. I'm going to speak to you today about the medical benefits of cannabis. My speech is called, What Would You Do? What would you do if someone you loved was in so much pain from MS that the only thing that eased that pain was the use of medical cannabis? What if someone you loved had cancer and medical cannabis was the only thing that settled their stomach, allowing them to eat? Each day across the United States, this is a question. A person who is watching a loved one suffer with a medical condition that traditional medicine does not help the way medical cannabis can. I will give you facts that prove that medical cannabis helps give relief to many different medical conditions and open your minds to be able to help a loved one who would benefit from it and not to think the person who is using medical cannabis is just some pothead. First, I will give you some history on cannabis and its uses, and then I will talk about specific benefits of the use of medical cannabis. The history of cannabis. Archaeologists agree that cannabis has been purposely cultivated for over 12,000 years, and all archaeologists agree it is among the first few crops purposely cultivated by humans and could well be the first. For 3,000 years, prior to 1842, marijuana and hashish extracts were the most widely used medicines in the world. The U.S. government distributed over 400,000 pounds of cannabis seeds to American farmers in 1942 to aid the war effort. In 1937, Dr. William C. Woodward, testifying on behalf of the American Medical Association, told Congress that the American Medical Association knows of no evidence that marijuana is a dangerous drug, and warned that a prohibition loses sight of the fact that the future investigation may show that there are substantial uses for medical cannabis. This is according to the Americans for Safe Access. Early medical ailments that cannabis was used for. The English clergyman Robert Burton, in his famous work, The Anatomy of Melancholy, published in 1621, suggested the use of cannabis in the treatment of depression. The New English Dispensary of 1764 recommended applying hemp root to the skin for inflammation, a practice that was already in use in Eastern Europe. The Edinburgh Dispensary in 1794 included a long description of effects of hemp oil and stated that the oil was useful in the treatment of coughs, venereal disease, and urinary incontinence. Cannabis did not come into the West as a medicine until the 19th century. During its heyday, from 1840 to 1900, more than 100 papers were published in the Western medical literature recommending its use for various illness and discomforts. The first Western physician to take an interest in cannabis was a physician by the name of W.B. O'Shaughnessy, the young professor at the Medical College of Calcutta who observed this use in India. In the report published in 1839, he wrote that he found tincture of hemp, a solution of cannabis in alcohol taken orally, to be an effective analgesic. He also was impressed with the muscle relaxant properties and called it anti-conclusive remedy of the greatest value. When O'Shaughnessy returned to England in 1842 and provided cannabis to pharmacists, the doctors in Europe and the United States began to prescribe it for various physical conditions. Queen Victoria was even prescribed cannabis by her court physician. These facts come from a book, Marijuana, the Forbidden Medicine. Because the U.S. government's strong policy against the stance of cannabis, this bulk of this modern cannabinoid research is taking place outside the USA. Clinical research shows that cannabis's remarkable capability to combat disease. Scientists today are exploring the potential role of cannabinoids to disease for depression. Scientists are investigating cannabinoids' capacity to moderate autoimmune disorders such as multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, inflammatory bowel disease, as well as their role in the treatment of neurological disorders such as Alzheimer's or ALS, aka Lou Gehrig's disease. Scientists studying the anti-cancer activities of cannabis as a growing body of preclinical and clinical data concludes that cannabinoids can reduce the specific spread of cancer cell via OSPOs, programmed cell death, and by the inhibitions of these in the formation of new blood vessels. Even in the United States, the government must realize the medical use of cannabis is that they hold 2 patents on the cannabinoids. The finding on the therapeutic use of cannabinoids can help Alzheimer's, fibromyalgia, gastrointestinal disorders, hepatitis C, hypertension, incontinence, multiple sclerosis, osteoporosis, rheumatoid arthritis, sleep apnea, and Tourette's syndrome. This research has found an entirely new potential clinical utilities for cannabinoids. The use of cannabinoids to modify the progression of diabetes. This information is from the THCF medical clinics. Many states here in the United States, according to NORML, National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Law, and more are following the example. These states have passed legislation for the medical cannabis. Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Montana, Colorado, New Mexico, Hawaii, Michigan, Vermont, Maine, New Jersey, and Rhode Island are all states that have legalized the medical use of cannabis. Each of these states have different guidelines that have to be followed to avoid being arrested by the local authorities. The NORML website breaks down each state and its guidelines. These states have pending legislation on medical cannabis. Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, Illinois are states that are presently considering it. In New Hampshire, some senators acknowledge that the private support of legalization, several committee members said the veto threat from Governor John Lynch convinced them that pursuing this bill is a fool's errand. I hope I have enlightened you today on the medical benefits of cannabis. And if you or a loved one find themselves with a medical condition which medical cannabis can help, you will consider it. There is a lot of very informative information on this subject if you have any further questions about medical cannabis. In addition, if you live in a state that does not currently have legislation for medical use of cannabis, you can call or write your representative and let them know that you support this legislation. Thank you.